Russell, thank you very much for being with us on this episode of Fluent English Pro.
Good. Nice to see you, David.
Nice to see you too as well. So I'm really happy I have you on the show because we have this huge revolution related to new technologies, to online tools, to artificial intelligence, and that is also, of course, impacting how we learn other languages. You have a huge background in both areas. Yes, learning languages, because I know you speak multiple languages, Spanish included. And you also work with integrating technology into education. Yes, you help train teachers so they can improve their practice by implementing the technology. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about like your profile and your background?
So, was a teacher since 1987. I worked in Greece, then I spent 11 years in Spain, and then went back to England. And I did a master's degree in multimedia computing, and then I kind of mixed the two skills together. So I began to lecture at university, where I was kind of like a teacher trainer, training teachers to use technology in their language teaching. I specialize in the use of technology in language teaching. And then what happened was I won a few awards. In fact, I won a couple of quite big awards, and that really gave me a much bigger profile. And so I eventually, after about 16 years of working at university, I decided to go completely freelance. So these days I do lots of consultancy work, helping university teachers at schools to use technology. I run my YouTube channel, which is very popular. There's about 90,000 subscribers. And I actually even get the chance sometimes to work with the companies that are developing the software. So sometimes a company will come to me and say, Russell, we're developing a piece of software, AI technology for language learning. Will you look at it and give us some feedback? So I'm often quite up to date with a lot of the technologies, not all of them because there are too many, but I try my best to be fairly up to date and look at technologies, try them out, test them, especially because I'm learning languages myself. So I also look at it from the student point of view as well as from the teacher's point of view. And that's really where I am now. So, just kind of freelancing and working for myself, and it's worked out quite well.
Great. That's a great profile. Okay. So now based on your knowledge and diving right into the topic, Russell, on social media lately, new content pops up that is originally recorded in English, but then I get to automatically hear it in my native language. Yeah. Even though I haven't set it up that way, it automatically happens. It's done via AI translation. Do you think like for a general public, learning a language will eventually become obsolete or unnecessary because everything is going to be automatically translated by AI?
Well, I do think, obviously, to some degree, that's going to be, well, it's obviously quite useful, and it does mean that certain types of people who are perhaps not used or not interested in learning languages, they will certainly benefit from that. But I mean, I think there are lots of reasons why people learn languages. It's not purely transactional. It's not purely to do with just work and, being able to work out or to understand what's being communicated to you. I think there are lots of other reasons why you learn a language. A curiosity for the culture would be an obvious one. So, you learn a language because, and also, of course, though, let's say, for example, you're working in a business, okay? It's way more than just a transactional thing. Let's say I'm English and I'm communicating with someone from Poland and we need to communicate together and I can't speak Polish. The fact that we've got these machines is going to be really, really powerful. But if I could speak Polish, that would open up another level of communication with that particular person or that particular company. That would be social, for example, whether or not we go out for a cup of coffee or for a drink or we end up becoming friends. So it's way beyond just the transactional thing of actually needing to communicate with someone. I mean, even to the degree that we often talk about what we call intercultural competence, that is really understanding another culture. Now, I've actually done a lot of work in China. And, intercultural competence in China is really, really important because there really are, the Chinese people have got certain customs and traditions that are quite different from the West. There are very, very interesting customs and traditions. And so you, again, are going to get access to that through the language and through being with people. Now, that's going to be much more difficult to learn just through translating. So for me, there are many more reasons why we might learn a language. So yes, these AI tools can help. And yes, I think there'll be contexts in which people will think, well, I'm not going to bother to learn the language because I only want it for transactional purposes. I'm not really interested in learning the language. And there are going to be people like that. But I mean, I think people learn languages for lots and lots of reasons. For example, I'm learning Polish because my wife's Polish. Now,
Mhm.
you know, the fact that we could use a translator together would obviously not work. It would be important that, she can speak my language and I can speak hers. So I think there are a lot of very interesting reasons why you might decide to learn a language. So I don't think that will be the case in the future.
Okay, yeah, that's very interesting, and that's a good segue to my next question. And I think, Russell, like even the transactional aspects of language still require those other competences that you mentioned. If you are doing businesses, for example, yeah, if you're like trying to negotiate a deal, translation is not going to be enough. You need to be able to understand how the other culture thinks and what they value.
I mean, absolutely. Even if you think about our own meeting together and kind of
Hmm.
building up and having a rapport and talking together, and we spent, had a meeting before to talk about this interview, etc. A lot of that would have been very difficult if it wasn't for the fact that your English was so good,
Hmm.
or that we'd have, So I think there are many, many reasons why you learn a commute, and there are a lot of factors that don't come into play through just the transactional thing of using a technology that's going to allow you to translate what's being communicated to you. There's
Hmm.
many, many more factors around that mean that I don't think that it will go out of fashion learning languages. In fact, I think probably to a degree, the fact that the technology has made the world so globalized and so connected. I would have thought that in many ways, and I don't have any figures to actually prove this, but it would have generated a lot of interest in actually learning languages, because people will, realize, they've got access to cultures and to information that they never had before. You know, um, I'm always thinking, wow, what's the next language I'm going to learn? Well, why? Well, because I watch YouTube videos about China or about Greece, and I'm thinking, well, I'd love to learn that language. I think really, in many ways, technology has facilitated an interest in languages rather than kind of affected it negatively.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. That's a very good perspective. Russell, I would like to zoom in a bit in terms of, okay, we just spoke about the general aspect of AI and learning another language. Now, I would like to focus a bit more on how this plays out in professional environments. Yes, like maybe I don't want to, or it's not my main intention to learn a language because I want to travel or because I want to learn about the other culture, but because it is required by my company, maybe because by my suppliers, my clients are foreign, or they belong maybe to international teams. So how can the arrival or the growth of AI tools or automatic translation impact using English in a professional setting? Will it be still?
I think, there's no doubt that it's going to be an aid. There's absolutely no doubt about that. It's definitely going to be an aid. And there will be circumstances and situations that people are in where, the AI will suffice. It will be sufficient. It will do the job that you want in that particular moment. But particularly when it comes to business, and we're talking about sort of professional circumstances, my feeling is that the reality about business is that it often requires that personal connection, and that it requires that a big part of what business is really is relationship building. You do business with somebody, you often do business with that person because you like them, because you connect with them, because you meet them online and you have a discussion and you think, yeah, I could work with this person. Now, I think that that's kind of quite difficult if you're having to sort of go through through a system that's facilitating communication. So I do think to a degree it will facilitate certain things, and I use Google Translate sometimes when I get an email from a country where I don't speak the language, or often do quite a lot of work in Germany and Austria. And the emails, even though the people that I work with, they do speak very good English, often the communication is still in the native language, but they're sending me an official document that I need to read before I run a course or something like that. And I can just quickly click on the button and translate that into English. That's really, really useful. But I think the relationship building aspect of business is still really, really important to speak languages. And I think also, like, for example, the whole importance of being kind of open to other cultures, being sympathetic to other cultures, I think that comes through developing an appreciation of their language, of their culture, etc. I think that there's a real empathetic part of what empathy. I think language learning on languages and learning that builds empathy, because it really helps you to understand another culture and to relate to it. I think it's really interesting, actually, to take that just a little bit further and be interested in what you think of this as well. Is that I actually think one of the most interesting things for me of the languages that I've learned to speak has been actually what it's made me think about my own culture. Because many things that I would have argued that when I was a young man, I would have said, everyone's like that. And now, after living in Spain and living in Greece and now living in Poland, I understand, no, they're not. I'm like that because I'm an Englishman. And I think you get that appreciation through language, through, connecting to other cultures, through understanding those cultures. And then suddenly it gives you a completely different perspective, not only on those cultures, but also on your own culture. And I think that's really interesting. And I'm sure you probably had the same experience.
I absolutely agree with you. It is a very good exercise of like self-reflection, or like observing
Mm,
yourself, your own language and your own culture from outside, and
yeah,
seeing like, this is why we do what we do. Like, I was not aware, and also brings awareness
yeah,
about how we behave, why we behave like that, what our values are, what maybe our strengths or weaknesses are culturally. So yeah, I have been there, and it's a very, I think it's one of the one of the things I enjoy the most when I interact with people from other countries, is being able to see my own culture, my own language, my own worldview from their eyes.
yeah, definitely, definitely. I think there's another really interesting thing about learning languages. People that don't learn languages kind of view people who do as being super intelligent, being extra intelligent. It gives you a certain prestige. I mean, I'm not a particularly intelligent person. I'm just your average person, went to university, blah, blah, blah. But I've learned to speak 3 languages, or I'm in the process of now learning a third one. And there is a certain sort of prestige that sort of has a bit of an impact on how people view you. So, wow, this guy, I noticed that people say, wow, he speaks 3 languages. He's learned 3 languages. Amongst my family, practically no one within my family or cousins and speaks other languages. And so for them, the fact that I do speak languages kind of means that they have a certain view of me. They're probably wrong to view me as more intelligent because I learn those languages. I think it's just about being determined. But certainly there is a sort of prestige connected to learning languages as well. And I think that probably would also carry through into a company. So if you were working for a company and you're someone working within a company and you do speak 3 or 4 languages, well, to a certain degree, I think, 1, those languages would be very useful to that company, but 2, there's almost a kind of prestige thing. Well, this guy speaks 3 or 4 languages. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's important. Quite unusual, but it's probably true.
Yeah, you're certainly going to be or viewed as more qualified.
Yeah,
All
exactly,
right, very
exactly.
interesting.
Hmm.
All right, going back to the AI scenario a little bit, and like AI and learning languages. I am aware that you are an explorer of new tools, and there are 2 things that happen. One is there's a lot of noise. There are a lot of quote unquote new tools or amazing tools that are actually just like something that already exists with a
Yep,
different
really good
interface.
point. Hmm.
So there's a lot of noise about that, but there is also a very rapid evolution, and like things are evolving so quickly. What do you think this is going to look like for language learners in 5 or 10 years from the future? Have you identified like any trends or any tendencies?
Yeah, I mean, I think, okay, from a language point of view, I mean, if you think about the way that language learning has evolved in the time that I've been a teacher. So if you look, back in 1987, when I first started teaching and I was working with a group of students, they would have had access to hardly anything. They would have had the course book and that would have been it. Now, students, you've got a student in the class, they've got access to so much content. They can go off and watch YouTube videos and blah, blah, blah. And so really a big chunk has already been done. In other words, the technologies that have evolved over the last 30 or 40 years, in many ways have had a really big impact on what we can access and what we can make use of. The way I'm studying Polish, for example, is completely different to the way that I studied Spanish and French, simply because the technologies are now available. And it really does impact as well on just how interesting I find the language learning process. Now, talking about the future, I think one of the things that we never could overcome was the chance to practice speaking. So I can go online now and I can watch YouTube videos. I can get access websites that help me to study the grammar. I can listen to loads and loads of content in Polish, for example. I can read loads of content. I can study vocabulary. I can do all the things, but I can't practice speaking. Speaking, I need to pay to have a teacher, which I actually do. I pay someone and I have classes with them every week. Now, what is happening is these bots will very soon, because they're not quite there yet. Just as you mentioned that stuff about the hype, and you'll every so often you'll be told, oh wow, this is an amazing bot and you can really work with it effectively, blah blah blah. They're not quite there yet, or certainly what I've come across so far, but they're getting there. They're getting there. And I've worked, for example, recently with a couple of technologies that I thought, wow, that's really clever. For example, one that I've come across where you can read a text. Let's say you're learning Spanish. You can go onto the website, choose your language and suggest your level. It will give you an interesting text to read. It will say, right, you've got these choices, read this text. So you read the text, or maybe you watch a video, and then it says, now would you like to talk about that with a bot? Now, that's really interesting because you're not just having a general chit chat with the bot. No, the bot is actually asking you questions about that text that you've just read. So that's really interesting because it's taking it to another level, because now I'm reading that text or listening to that text, and maybe I'm studying a bit of the vocabulary before I have my conversation. Then I talk to the bot and I'm practicing and using the same language again, because language learning is so much about repetition. So I do think that in the future, that's going to be a really interesting area. Because voice recognition I always thought voice recognition was almost, that it wasn't going to be, they were never going to get there, but clearly they are. They really are getting there. It's getting better and better and better. But when these bots are really focused around your learning, I think that's going to be very interesting. And I can see that is emerging. And also the other thing is most bots at the moment, you kind of go on there and you choose your character and you choose such and such a person. Then you have a conversation, but you don't actually see that person on the screen. It's not like a 3D or image of them. Basically, you choose the picture and then you start having a conversation. Now, those conversations are pretty good, but I think in the future you really will literally have someone on the screen that you'll be talking to, and you really will be able to communicate with them. And that person will, I'm not sure how far it's going to get, whether or not they will be able to not only communicate with you, but maybe even correct you. But I suspect that will happen, because I've even seen bots that I've tested out in Spanish, for example, and I'm having a conversation with it, and then it will say, Russell, your Spanish is really good, but you made a small mistake. And I'm like, wow, that's, so already they exist. Now, they haven't got you're not actually talking to a person at the moment. You're just talking to kind of the computer. Very, very soon, there will be an image there. There'll be a 3D image that you're talking to. And it probably exists already, but I haven't come across them myself. I think that's big in the future.
Yeah. Because now that I think of it, like you can have the voice interaction, but paralinguistics are also part of the communication. So you need to see how the other person reacts, like what their emotions are, like whether their eyes are looking at, like how, like their body language. And I'm sure eventually that is going to be incorporated into these tools.
Definitely. And then the other thing is headsets. So imagine you putting on a 3D headset. Okay. And let's say,
Mhm.
for example, this could be a language product that could be developed where you put on the headset, you say, I'm learning Spanish. I want to practice language of going into a clothes shop. And then you choose your option and bang, you're there. And you walk into the clothes shop. Yeah, it's all going on your headset, and someone comes up to you, and a shop assistant comes up and says, how can I help you? What you're looking for? And you'll be, or maybe you've even been given a task. You've got to go into this shop, and you've got to buy a pair of blue trousers and a grey jumper and a new pair of shoes. And you literally would go through that process. Yeah, so you'd have your headset on, so it almost feel real as if you're really in the shop. That's going to happen. I mean, I've sat not on in like I mean I've seen actually I know that there are some examples around, and I have even experienced a little bit. Again, these things are going to advance. They're going to get to that. I mean, because we know that the graphics already in games are superb, and now all they need to really do is to kind of set that within a language learning context. I see that also happening very, very quickly. Within the next 5 years, for example, but probably even quicker.
Mhm. Okay. Great. Very interesting. So now that we're speaking about tools, Russell, are there any AI-based tools for learning languages or for learning English that you have tried and tested and that you love or really like? Of course, the ones that are currently available for users, because I'm sure there are some of them that they are currently like in beta testing or alpha testing stage, not available for public, but the ones that are available for public, which ones would you recommend or have you tried so far?
I suppose, yeah, it's interesting. Now, obviously, I'm language obsessed, all right? So I'm studying French and Polish all at the same time. I speak French fairly well, and I'm learning Polish. And there's certain technologies I just absolutely love. So two that I'll highlight. One, because they're free. So really useful, they're free. Two, they already function really well. One of them will be a technology called TurboScribe. Now, it doesn't sound exciting. All it does is you can choose any video from YouTube. You can put it into TurboScribe, click on a button, and it will extract from that YouTube video the transcript, but it will be super accurate, be way more accurate than the transcript that normally comes with the YouTube video. Okay. So suddenly then I've got a YouTube video and I've got the perfect transcript of that YouTube video. So now what I can do is kind of go through that transcript and select words that I don't understand and maybe put them into Google Translate and learn them. Okay. But then what I can do is I can save that transcript. And I could upload it into, say, ChatGPT or Google Gemini or Copilot or whatever, and say, summarize the transcript for me. Extract for me 15 interesting words that I need to study from that transcript. Extract for me 10 collocations that would be interesting for me to learn. And it will just generate that content for me. Okay. So in other words, what I can now do is kind of choose a YouTube video, something I'm interested in, and then study the vocab, the collocations, etc., so that I can understand more about that video. Then I can go back and watch it again. Now, all of that's free. Now, I wouldn't have been able to do that even 5 years ago, even 3 years ago, in all honesty. The fact that I can extract the transcript from almost any video in any language, by the way. I mean, it works in Polish, it works in Spanish, it works in Chinese, etc. Okay. And then you can then just save that save that as a file and then upload it into ChatGPT or Google Gemini and get it to generate all sorts of things. Now, that's really interesting. Okay. Another thing that I really love, one of the ways that I've learned languages is through reading and listening. I'm a big fan of reading and listening at the same time. Okay. So if I go onto the internet and I find any text in Polish that I currently want to read, or I even get ChatGPT to even just write the text for me, whatever, I can copy that text and I can paste it into a technology called naturalreaders.com, completely free. So I paste it into naturalreaders.com. I choose the language. So in my case, let's say that it's a Polish text. I paste it in. I choose Polish, and it's going to give me a selection of voices. And then I choose Marek, and I click on it, and then I play, and then I can now listen and read at the same time. And not only that, natural readers will actually highlight the word that's being read. Now, that combination of being able to read and listen for me is super powerful. When I studied French and Spanish, I spent a fortune on buying little readers, little simple stories in Spanish and in French with a cassette. and then later a CD-ROM, that I could then listen to the story being read out. So I could listen and read at the same time. Now I can just do that like that. I can go onto ChatGPT or go onto Google Gemini and say, write me a text in Poland about the city of Krakow. Can you make it for level B1? It writes the story. Copy that story, paste it into natural readers, choose the language, Polish, choose the speaker, let's say Agnieszka, click on Agnieszka, click on play, bang, now I'm listening and reading at the same time. That is a revelation in terms of language learning, because we know that, input is really important. Being able to read and listen is super powerful because it helps you with pronunciation, it helps you with your ability to read, and it really does mean that I'm a great believer in language exposure. I'm a great believer in being exposed to the language as much as possible. Yeah. And of course, when you, for example, get ChatGPT to generate a text for you, you can say to it, oh, my level in Polish is B1. Or my level in Spanish is C2. Can you write me, a 500-word text about the current political situation in Spain? All in Spanish. Lovely. Copy that, paste it into natural readers, choose a Spanish as the language, choose a voice, and then bang, I can now listen and read that text. You couldn't do that David, you couldn't even do that 3 years ago. This is really recent, and it really has, as I said, had a massive impact on the way I learn languages. I did a similar thing in French and Spanish, but it cost me a lot of money, and I was much more restricted. Now I can literally get up every morning and do the same thing every day, which is what I really do. So those would be two really great technologies. TurboScribe.ai, completely free. You can use it for free videos a day, and natural readers. Again, you can use it for free. You don't even need to sign into natural readers. You can just paste in your text and listen to it.
Mm-hmm. Those articulated with Gemini and ChatGPT, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and then you can link those to to Gemini. As I said, what you can do is, if you go to TurboScribe, is you put in a video, okay, that you're interested in. I did it today. So I took a video, right? I put it into TurboScribe, and it generated the transcript. And I saved that. You can say, once it generates a transcript, you can say save as document. It saved it for me. I got that transcript from that video. Then I open up Gemini, and then in Gemini you have something called file, open file. Click on open file, open that file that you've just saved, and that's now in Gemini. And now you just tell Gemini to do anything. You say, right, I want 10 keywords from that transcript that I need to study to understand the video better. I want 10 collocations that would be really useful for me to study. I want a summary. I want a translation into English. I want you to produce 10 multiple choice questions for me based around the video. And it will do all of that for you. So you can build all your learning around, which is my way of learning. I'm a really big fan of watching YouTube videos and using that. And then what I normally do, David, is after I've studied all that, I'd go back and watch the YouTube video again. And then I could really register, right, now I understand more. Yeah, so it's incredible.
Great. All right, so we've spoken about listening, reading, writing. Are there any tools that you will recommend to practice speaking that integrate AI?
Yeah, so as I said, they're evolving. The one that I was telling you about earlier, where you can already, is called Lingolet. I think it's called Lingolet.ai. Now, and again, that tool allows you a certain amount for free. So you can go onto Lingolet, you tell it your language that you want to study. Okay, you tell it the areas that you're interested in. Let's say I go onto Lingolet and I say, well, I'm interested in technology, health, and sports. And then what Lingolet does is says, right, okay, this guy's studying Polish. He's interested in these 3 topics. Here are, and I can tell Lingolet what level I am. Here are 5 or 6 texts that you might find interesting. So I click on one. Now, normally when you click on that text, you can listen and read that text. Okay, for free. This is for free. Obviously, if you pay, you're going to get more. But then once you've finished and you've read that text, you can then say, now let's talk about it. And you click on the button at the bottom, and now a bot will come on and have a conversation with you about that text. So it's almost like testing your knowledge of it. That is really clever. So Lingolet, again, this is a new technology. It's already around. It's not perfectly developed, but that's a pretty good technology to use. And it's got that aspect that other bots don't have. If you want just a standard bot that you could use, just go on and say, I want to practice Spanish, my level is B1, and then you just have a conversation with the technology. There's one called Gliglish. That's very good because it has lots and lots of languages. Gliglish.ai, I think it is Gliglish.ai. You click on there, just choose the language that you want to practice. And then you get a few options. Do you just want to have a general conversation, or do you want to talk about some specific topics? Click on general conversation, and on comes a system. A bot comes on and says, let's say it's in Spanish. Hola, buenos dias, Russell. ¿De qué quieres hablar? And you say, bueno, me gustaría hablar de blah, blah, blah. And you can start to have a conversation. Now, you can do that for up to 10 minutes a day for free. Okay? And what you could do, because there are many of those kind of bots around, is sign up to a few of them. So you haven't even got to pay. Maybe 2 or 3. There's so many different ones. TalkPow might be another one, if I remember rightly from the top of my head. So you don't even need to pay for these things. And that way you could practice your speaking every day as well. So there we are.
Do any of these give you feedback, or is it just the interaction?
No, some of them do. In fact, I'm not sure if it's always in the free tool, but I think if I remember rightly, Gliglish gave me feedback. So, so just go on there and start having a conversation. It says, Russell, your Spanish is very good, but blah, blah, blah. You need to consider this, and it will give you a few. And what I like about the feedback, and I remember this when I've done it quite a few times, is that it doesn't give you loads and loads of feedback, which is something students always misunderstand. They always like, tell me what I'm doing wrong. No. Let's focus on one thing at a time. So what I noticed about those types of technologies, those bots, often they're not kind of giving you corrections of everything. They'll pick on one thing that they think really you need to rectify. So in that way, they're very good. So these systems do provide feedback.
Amazing. So for the listeners right now, all the links to all the tools Russell is recommending right now are going to be on the show notes, because it's a lot of information, it's a lot of tools. All of them are super useful. Of course, some of them are partially free, some of them are paid. But I think even in the situation, for example, you mentioned that 10 minutes a day, I think it's good enough. If you do a daily practice, 10 minutes a day are going to give you great results.
Exactly. No, I mean, those 3 technologies that I've described, you could use them all for free. Natural Readers is free. TurboScribe will work with up to 3 videos a day for free. And you only, probably only going to work with 1 video. And Gliglish will give you 10 minutes conversation for free every day.
Amazing. All right. Let's start wrapping up, because this is a lot of very, very valuable information. There is a lot of golden data here that I'm sure our listeners are going to profit from. If there is a professional who is maybe in a level like B1, B2, they're intermediate, they want to continue improving, but there are so many tools, there are so many assets out there. Maybe the scenario today is the opposite from 20 years ago. Yes, it's not the lack of, it is the excess of. I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to pick. What would you recommend this person to do as a first step, so they don't get overwhelmed with so many options out there? I don't know which ones are good, which ones aren't.
Okay, yeah. I mean, obviously, I think for me, when I'm working, at the center of my language learning is always watching YouTube videos. Because see, what you can do with YouTube videos is you can go on and you can search for what you want. I might say, for example, I want, I can look for, YouTube channels about Premier League football in Polish. All right, because I'm going to study Polish, but I want to study through something that I'm interested in. Or what I do a lot in Polish is look for YouTube channels about traveling. So the first thing really is, whenever you're learning a language, is to kind of use YouTube as an opportunity to study the language, because there's masses of material, but through the things that you're interested in. So in my case, it would be traveling, it would be football, it would be kind of stuff around motivation. I like all that kind of stuff about, how you should organize your day and be really motivated and directed. And then I like stuff around health. Okay, so I'll go on and say, right, today I want to learn such and such. I want to practice my Polish, and I want to work around the area of health. And then I'll search for some videos. And then once I've got that video, once I've got some videos, I've got to be really careful. I can try to search for, and you can even do this. You could sort of write in the search term easy or level B1 or level B2. You can actually write that in, and you'll probably get some videos that will come back to you. Yeah. Then I'll choose a video, and then I'll say, right, okay, this looks interesting, and then I'll watch that video. Okay, and I normally will watch it the first time. And I try to choose videos as well. And there is something in YouTube called filters. And if you click on the filters, you can say, well, I only want videos that are between 4 and 20 minutes. That filters button's on the right-hand side. It's really useful because it filters the videos and allows you to choose certain videos. So then I've got my video and I'm watching my video. Okay. Then the next thing I'm going to do is say, right, okay, I'm going to go to TurboScribe. I'm going to copy the link. I'm going to go to TurboScribe. I'm going to paste that in. I'm going to extract the transcript, and I'm going to start reading that transcript and going through it and selecting certain words that I want to study. And what I'll often do is I'll copy that word and then I'll paste it into Google Translate to give me a translation into my language. So I can say, okay, right, that's what that word means. Oh, okay, that's what that word means. So I'm kind of attacking the transcript and attacking the video. Now, one thing, a big mistake that people make, and I always make this as well, is that I attempt to learn too many words. One thing that's really important to understand is that because this is really important, a lot of people concentrate on, what they're studying. That's not that important. It's what you're learning is important. And so what I mean by that is you could go on, go through the transcript and save 20 words into Google Translate, and then maybe you write them out on pieces of paper and try to memorize them and try to learn them. And it's very likely that you're not gonna memorize 20 words. But if you only focused on 8, and you did a few activities with those 8 words, and then you woke up the next morning, let's say you put the words into a little envelope or little pieces of paper. You woke up in the morning, you've only studied 8 words the day before, and you open up that envelope, you pull out those words. There's a really good chance that maybe 4 or 5 of them you can remember. So there is kind of a sort of it's like the law of diminishing returns. The more you try to study, the less you remember. So it is really important to, when you're learning a language, to focus on learning and not on studying. It's like teachers are the same. They go into class and they try to teach everything. They focus on what they teach. No, they should be focusing on what the students are learning. So that for me is the key. So massive piece of advice I'd give to people is, I think YouTube's a great way. If you're like level B1, B2, don't get carried away with, God, I've got 50 words to learn. No, constantly per day, try to learn 6 or 7 new words, max. But, after a few months, that multiplies hugely and suddenly your level's going up. And I have to admit, I make this mistake all the time, even though I've read about it and I know about it and I've read the research and, I've experienced it myself. I'm always tempted to try to learn too many words. Another thing about language learning, and comes again really connected to what we're talking about, unfortunately, because this is a bit frustrating, you can't beat repetition. So you can't beat watching a video, studying the vocabulary from it, and then going back and watching that video again, and then maybe waking up the next morning and going back and watching it again, because it's refreshing your knowledge of what you've been studying. It's processing and using what you've been working with. So you do have to do that quite a lot. You have to keep going back to the video or checking just making sure that you're always working around that language rather than sort of expanding outwards too much, because what happens is you forget everything that you've studied if you done that. That's why learning languages is tricky.
Mm-hmm. Those are great tips, Russell. Those are amazing tips. And I'm sure they are going to address a lot of common issues learners have, because sometimes we want to advance very quickly and do too much in a short time, and we are actually doing ourselves a disservice. So we should focus on absorbing the little things instead of gulping like a huge amount of information at once.
Yeah. David, one final tip to add there, because I know obviously because of time, is if you study that YouTube video, right? And I'll take a perfect example, the one that I studied today. I've got my headphones here with me now. And let's say when I go for a walk later, bang, I put my headphones on and I play that video again. So I'm often, exposing myself to the language at moments when I'm cutting the grass, or I'm washing up the dishes, or even in the shower. I turn the headphones off and put the microphone, the speaker on, and I'll listen. You can't beat language exposure. The more exposure you get to the language, the better. Now, if that's a video that you've already studied the vocabulary from, and then suddenly you're in the shower and you're listening to that video again, or you're cooking the dinner and you're listening to that video again, and that word comes up and you're like, oh yeah, I studied that word today. That's how you learn language. That's how the magic happens. And that's why that kind of exposure and repetition to language is so important. And to make use of dead time. You're on the train, you're at the bus station. When I cut the lawn, bang, on go the headphones. When I'm in the shower, incredibly, I listen to Polish all the time. That making use of that dead time and keep playing the same videos again and again and again. It really is the key to learning languages.
Amazing, Russell. Those are golden tips. All those are going to be there in the show notes for the people listening. And these are things that you can implement right away.
Definitely,
and then they are going to hugely benefit your language learning process. So thank you so much for that. Russell, I know you have a lot of great strategies and great tools you constantly share on your YouTube channel. And I'm certain those are going to benefit our listeners as well. So if people want to see the new thing, because you continually create content about new tools, new strategies, where can they find you so they can continue getting these tools?
Go on to teachertrainingvideos.com. You'll see loads of different kind of choices at the top of the screen. You can click on it and you're going to get videos about listening and reading and writing, etc. And there's content there that you can make use of, and it's all free. But perhaps the better thing, even more important than that, is when you go onto that teachertrainingvideos.com, on the right-hand side, you'll see a link to my YouTube channel. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, because that way you're going to get the absolute latest. I'm testing out and using these technologies. And then when I come across something interesting, I'm making a YouTube video about, and I'm putting it out there, and people are accessing them. I've got a video, for example, that I just uploaded in the last couple of days. It's already had 50,000 plays. These are videos, not all of them, but some of them are very, very popular. And that's all about technology and language learning. Obviously, loads of technologies these days are about AI. So that's probably the best thing to do. Follow my YouTube channel.
Great. So for those listening, the links to Russell's website and YouTube channel are going to be in the show notes. Russell, thank you very much for sharing with us all of your knowledge and experience. I'm sure this is going to be of great help to language learners out there. And hopefully we will have you on the show on a future episode.
David, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.